Record. Okay, so this is the November 3rd ACTL meeting, which I did not record the announcements at the beginning of the meeting, but we are back from short breakout groups. And so it is now being recorded. So we will move right into the conversation this evening with Bridget Loft, and I don't know if other staff will be joining her to talk about literacy. As to remind everyone, we will have a Q&A period at the end of the presentation. So if you can hold your questions so that we can see if perhaps they are answered during the course of the presentation, then we'll populate the chat with questions when we transition to that Q&A time. So I will turn it over to Bridget.
Thanks, Bethany. We are fortunate to have not one, but two English language arts supervisors with us today. So I'm really happy and grateful to welcome Sarah Cruz, who is our elementary ELA supervisor, and Lori Silver, who is our secondary ELA supervisor. And they're gonna tag team this presentation. So I'm gonna pass the mic to them.
Thanks for having us here. Bethany, if it's okay with you, I'm going to commandeer and share our screen. We have a presentation prepared for you all. This is our second round of this presentation. We also have the privilege of sharing a lot of this information with Dr. Duran in the cabinet 2 weeks ago. So we're excited about this information to share with you.
Go for it. You should be able to share your screen. So
it looks like it's good to go.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Cruz. I'm the new elementary ELA supervisor. And thank you so much for being here with us as we turn our attention towards literacy tonight in Arlington. We just really appreciate your thinking around this. And I know that you'll get a lot of information that you can take back to your school sites and communities. So this is our team. Lori, myself, and then we have two specialists, one for elementary, Christine, and then also Lauren for secondary. And they really help us guide the curriculum and resource the schools.
So just to give you an overview of our presentation, we're going to talk about why we are making changes with our English language instruction in Arlington K-12. We're going to share with you our ELA office vision that we have built in collaboration with lots of offices across the Office of Academics, with Dr. Duran, the cabinet, our principals, our teachers. There's a lot of people that have input into that work, and you all as our community members and stakeholders. Sarah and I will take you through details of our strategic focus areas, which are assessments, curriculum instruction, professional learning, resources, collaboration, and communication. And we'll take you from summertime and up until even this week. And then we're going to share with you our priorities for literacy and APS, and also the ways that we appreciate your interest in our work and your advocacy.
So if we think about the history of the program, we kind of take a little history walk of the past 5 years, and what a lot of the data in our literacy screeners has been showing is that there's declining growth in literacy over time. We had a few screeners, PALS for K2, that have been used for a number of years. That's the state level screener, and then reading inventory, and that was being used at the middle schools as well. But both were really demonstrating limited growth in students meeting their reading requirements. And we just actually also were needing a little bit more information because we weren't capturing all the students that were struggling or needing support in those early grades. We also took a look at standards of learning assessments and saw some long-term declining trends in reading and writing for a lot of our opportunity gap students, not making the same growth when compared to their peers. More elementary students were being identified as requiring interventions. And this was prior to the pandemic. We know that the last couple of years have been off with so much time at home and virtual learning, and then some hybrid learning and things like that. So there have been interruptions, but even prior to that, this is what a lot of the data was showing, that lots of students were needing interventions as they progressed by grade level to when we would get to the 5th grade and we would have maybe 30%, 40% division wide that were needing intervention and scoring below benchmark. And then that being a really hard handoff to middle school. Previously allocated resources demonstrated that we were lacking efficacy based on recent research. So a lot of the research and in the reading communities, especially around the science of reading, and also national organizations that review curriculum are currently putting out a lot of critiques on the curriculum that's sitting in our elementary schools right now. So we know that there were major revisions needed to our resources to meet the instructional needs of our students. And we'll talk more specifically on when we get to curriculum and resources on the next few slides about what that is. But I'm sure you've had conversations in your school sites about some of those things. So we did a lot of changing with K2, and we're still in the change process as we're looking towards an RFP, a request for purchase as well.
So Sarah and I would like to share with you what our office does in terms of work within Arlington Public Schools. We do a lot of visioning. We provide a lot of guidance in terms of best practices for literacy, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Our job is to help provision our schools and our teachers with the resources that they need. We provide a viable and guaranteed written ELA curriculum, which is based upon the Virginia Standards of Learning, but APS has the opportunity to interpret in a way that makes sense for our school division. We provide assistance with planning the year-long calendar based upon instructional needs. We provide guidance to all of our schools on data cycles. We pull data reports for a lot of schools, but also we help interpret that information. We do data disaggregation. We pull those reports in an up-to-date manner to provide schools with the information that they need to act upon in terms of instruction. We also have a focus on equity in APS, making sure that we're aligned with evidence-based practices in that way as well for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we engage in a very collaborative process, not just across central office, but with all of our schools and our administrators and our teachers. So Sarah and I would also like to share this graphic with you. This has been very grounding for our office and our work in APS. And so these are the very strategic areas in which we devote a lot of time, energy, and effort. So we're going to talk to you in more in depth about each of these as we go through the sets of slides, but we do a lot of work with assessments, curriculum, instruction, professional learning, and resources, as well as communication and collaboration. And we'll describe how each one of those buckets or areas impact our work as we collaborate within the division with our schools and with our community as well. What Sarah and I really do want to focus on with you, however, is when we change one area, it impacts all the other areas at the same time as well. So when we look at changing our resources, that has an impact on professional learning for our teachers. And we have to make sure that that's meaningful, sustained, and that we have very strategic planning in that way. When we look at our assessments, that's also going to impact professional learning. That may impact our ability to have more high quality evidence-based resources. So Sarah and I are very cognizant that when you improve one area, you have to improve all the other areas at the same time. And so we'll talk about that through this presentation as well. Okay. So in terms of assessments, this has been a very assessment-driven year for us in APS, both decided by us as well as the state of Virginia. And we understand that that has created a lot of stress. It puts a lot of pressure on schools in terms of the calendar. Some of these are state mandated, so that's not within our control. But also we recognize the need to have really up-to-date, strong, and efficient information about our students at the same time. So this is what this slide really is going to illustrate for you. One thing that we have is also initiatives that are related to our assessment processes and procedures. Not only do we want to have information about our opportunity gap group, we want to continue to monitor our students. We want to have actionable information that's going to influence our literacy instruction K-12. And new to this year, we're also in a process of building writing portfolios across 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. It's starting in 9th grade this year. So in terms of looking at assessment, we're not just thinking about SOL tests, but also all the data that we want to collect on our students that's going to impact the day-to-day instructional needs of our students and as well as our teachers. And also we're very invested in grading for our equity initiatives that are going across APS right now.
Okay, our curriculum is where we create, purchase, implement rigorous curriculums for literacy with our students. There's been a lot of changes in our elementary curriculum just this last summer. And then there was professional learning during pre-service and base camp to get teachers familiar with some of those changes. And they were happening primarily in K through 2 grade levels because we removed the Lucy Calkins units of study and reading in those grade levels. So then we replaced it with a few other things. And one of the shifts that we made in the ELA department towards the science of reading and in alignment with the research that we've been reading and really educating ourselves and all district leaders on is implementing a systematic and explicit phonics program. So we installed that in all the schools for K through 3. And that was really to give a lot of explicit, very direct instruction for students that are coming to all the grade levels with lots of gaps. But we also know there's a correlation between the speech and the print. And so this program really puts those two together for kids to gain automaticity in all those foundational skills so that they're able to read proficiently going into the 3rd grade and then reading to learn as they continue through their career. So that was a big shift that happened. All of our curriculum documents had to be updated and revised in relation to that shift. And then we're continuously giving professional learning and guidance to teachers on how to implement that. And they're working so hard. We trained so many teachers during pre-service on our new curriculum. And then some, that we onboarded a few more teachers too, even after the school year started. So we continued and we had some evening time trainings just last week for each of the grade levels. And they came ones that hadn't had it before. And so that was really good and exciting work. We're also revising secondary curriculum documents to include really evidence-based reading and writing practices, and that focus on writing is something that Lori and Lauren are taking over and just really hitting the ground running with and empowering the teacher leaders at the schools to help lead that work as well. And then we're continuing to align our curriculum with a really culturally responsive framework, and that's something that we're continuing to work on too.
So as you can hear from what Sarah just said about the curriculum part, that also has a strong tie and intersection with instruction and our expectations of high quality instruction for our students. And part of that work is to make sure that we're always increasing teacher instructional efficacy. And that means we're giving teachers the tools that they need in order to have impactful instructional strategies, that they know that their students really well, but our teachers are the best resources for instruction, particularly literacy instruction, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And so that intersection means that in curriculum, we're declaring it really explicitly, but instruction are the strategies that we're expecting teachers to use day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year in terms of their students. And what we're very committed to with our literacy instruction in APS is making sure that it aligns to the science of reading and writing and that it's evidence-based. And when it's not evidence-based, we're challenging that and we're trying to correct that course and make sure that we're having that conversation with our schools in terms of high expectations for that instruction to take place.
Okay, the professional learning. This is a really exciting part because this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's really engaging our whole workforce and providing that time to collaborate with the teachers and reading specialists at the school sites so they feel prepared to take the curriculum and implement it in the instruction for our students so that they're really getting a wonderful literacy experience and learning all the things that they need to. A few things that have been happening are we implemented DIBBLES, a new literacy screener for our K through 2 students. So there was lots of professional learning around that, administering all the subtasks to the students and then gathering up that data. We also had letters for administrators, which is really a research grounding in the science of reading and the things that should be happening in the school sites around reading. And our administrators went through cohorts this summer of that and received a lot of training and understanding around that so that they could, be the instructional leader in their building around literacy. And we have a few cohorts that are still continuing on, a cohort of reading specialists, EL teachers, and then also some administrators from SciFax too going through that. I mentioned before our Core 95 phonics training that happened at pre-service, and then we also offered some more trainings just last week to make sure everyone has a really solid understanding of the expectation and implementation of our core phonics programs in grades K through 3. And as we continue forward in the year, we're partnering with the Office of ATSS, so that's our tiered systems of support, in order to start thinking through and training our staff on interventions. So now that we've gathered up a lot of data, we know that students are receiving good core instruction, and then some are going to need a little bit more. And we're working with ATSS on getting some training for that in the next couple of months to come through. At the bottom, you can see we're in year 2 of Lexia and Core 5 Power Up. So we're still doing really great with that, but being mindful and monitoring schools' progress. I just sent some usage reports out to principals so they could really keep a pulse on their building. Are we, using this tool? Because that's one of our big tools in elementary and middle school and some of our high school classes to accelerate learning and give students opportunities for that unfinished learning to happen as well.
So we're also deeply embedded in making sure that we're provisioning our students with evidence-based resources, because that aligns with practices, that aligns with our instructional outcomes, that aligns with our professional learning for our teachers. And so this summer, as we really became invested in this shift of work to align to the science of reading, we provisioned our elementary schools with decodables. We provided interactive read aloud text. As Sarah talked about, we purchased the 95 Phonics Core program. And we also wanted to make sure that we gave opportunities to teachers to sort of refresh both their information and their resources about Step Up to Writing. And then as Sarah said, we were in year 2 of our Lexia implementation. And then at the secondary level, we have No Red Ink as well as New Zealand. So that's just an overview of the resources that we brought into APS, but also as we renewed resources as well. And then right now we're in the process, thanks to Sarah's leadership, as she's chairing our resource allocation process at the district level right now, with more information to come. But there are goals to ensure that we have high quality resources with our teachers and in front of our students. And there's a lot of legalities and policy and things like that we have to follow in terms of detail. And so Sarah is heading up that work right now. And just as a reminder to some folks who may not realize this, we do provision across lots of different offices, departments as well. So we make sure that pre-K has resources that they need. It goes all the way from K to 12. We also work with special education, ATSS, and the Office of English Learners. So when there's a need in terms of literacy instruction, there's a lot of collaboration that happens behind the scenes to make sure that our teachers have what they need, our students have what they need, but also that we're processing that amongst ourselves in terms of central office leadership too.
Lori, before you move on that slide, I just want to mention that RFP process. It's a tiny little bullet near the bottom, but that, like Lori said, that's the pathway and the procedures that we need to follow in order to remove and replace some of the curriculum and resources that are sitting in the school sites right now. So if some of your community members and your parents at your school sites have mentioned, oh gosh, why didn't they remove all of it, or things like that, or why didn't it shift everything in the summertime, or things like that, there's a formal procedure so that things are properly vetted in order to replace, and it takes about 6 months to a year to make that happen. Collaboration and communication. We are constantly, like Lori said earlier, working with different departments, and I was glad she mentioned Office of EL, because we've partnered with them on presenting just on October 11th a presentation and a training for all of our teachers, or many of our teachers that signed up on the science of reading. So there's really a lot of collaboration going on in between offices and then also with the school sites. I also got to work with lots of elementary school principals this morning in order to train them on how to monitor and really keep a pulse on the literacy progress in their school sites. So that in turn gave them some more information, gave them an opportunity to look at some data that go into their literacy goals for their school plans. So that is constantly happening, you know, week to week, and especially when we have leadership meetings with the principals and then the collaborative learning teams within SciFax as we're working together with other offices. We're really looking to provide like turnkey professional learning to the school leadership teams, which usually consists of a few key leaders, you know, grade level chairs or an MSRT or a reading specialist, and then we'll develop it and then pull them together to help train them on it, and then we can deploy that training to the schools so that they're able to give just in time and on-the-job training for their teachers. I think that's it. Oh, and then I cannot leave out our ELAC committee. We definitely have a fabulous, fabulous committee that partners with us on all things literacy. We're just really, really grateful for such thoughtful and wonderful colleagues. I think Kate's on our call tonight. That was the one that I saw. There might be a few others, but they're just doing a great job in just really representing APS and Arlington's needs and helping us with recommendations for the school board in regards to literacy and making sure that we have just an excellent, high quality program for our students.
So this is kind of a recap of what we just shared with you all in terms of what are our ELA priorities for the year. So we have a high priority for professional learning. We want our teachers to be the best resource that we have for instructing our students. We're working through the resource allocation process. We fund everything literacy related across the school division with also other departments at the same time. We are having a consideration about meaningful staffing at schools. There's a lot of research behind having dedicated literacy coaches at elementary, middle, and high schools. I know Math has brought forward that recommendation too about where staffing is really highly important. That those folks, when they're embedded in schools, help provide job embedded professional learning to teachers, and they serve as a really good right hand to school administrators at the same time and serve as a liaison between that work at schools as well as central office expectations. So we are looking at that, and we're thinking that through quite a bit. We also have a recommendation to try to reduce class sizes in our secondary English courses. Those of you that have a high school student or have a recent or not so recent graduate, you know that high school English teachers have to provide a lot of writing feedback or literacy feedback to students, and that's a multiplier. The more students that you have in a classroom, the more feedback a teacher is expected to provide. And so there's some mathematics that go alongside the amount of time that is spent working through a meaningful feedback writing cycle with students. So therefore that recommendation. And then also we're very invested in our collaboration and our stances with other offices and APS to make sure that we're really aligned with all of this visioning and all of our strategic planning at the same time.
Okay, this is our ELA at work. This is our elementary. We have a group of first grade students in the upper right hand corner that are working on their encoding after their phonics lesson. I went in just to see what are the resources looking like, how are the teachers using it, what's the students' responses. They're able to you're able to get a glimpse there. And then at the bottom you're seeing a 5th grade teacher, and she's doing vocab search, and that's a morphology study. That's a new resource also that we put in with 5th grade so that students are able to break words apart and work on prefixes, suffixes, and word parts, Greek and Latin roots, to really exponentially grow their knowledge of words. These are just some of the things that we're currently implementing. A lot of it was just goals, but in partnership with you all and with our ELAC committee, they're in progress now, and we're really excited about that. Just structured literacy curriculum happening in K through 3. Interactive read alouds have been really well received in K through 2. Those were written by APS grown curriculum team, and they're just doing really well in building vocabulary and background knowledge with our students. And then again, we're continuing to implement Lexia Core 5 to give kids that acceleration and boost and access to maybe out of grade level material for any unfinished learning that they have in reading. So it's going pretty well. We have a lot of stuff in progress.
So here's the list for secondary as well. We know that the best way to improve instruction is to meet teachers where they are and to provide them with a great deal of training and to build their professional capacities. So that's where the Office of ELA in the secondary side of our house has been a lot over the past several weeks. Beginning this summer, we're working on our portfolio assessments for writing. We're really working hard on writing shifts. What does that look like in APS? We are helping with the implementation and rollout at the high school level of Lexia Power Up. And there's a lot of professional learning, CLT work, data analysis, creating formative assessments. We're trying to hit a lot of different high leverage areas for our secondary teachers in terms of instruction, and particularly always as a foundation of science of reading and writing and evidence-based practice.
Mm-hmm. And here we see some ELA professional learning, and this is just some of the numbers of the trainings that have happened even just since the summertime, since July. One of them, 777 K-3 teachers, and that's across content areas. So we have gen ed, special ed, and EL teachers being trained in our new phonics program, which really stands out. 55 reading specialists being trained in science of reading on October 20th. That was a really exciting day. Letters cohorts, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. And that's a really research-driven, resource agnostic training that they're going through, just so that they're really founded in what are we looking for and what are we expecting in alignment with our shift to the science of reading in our classrooms.
And then just to help us finish up, we wanted to share with you the numbers for secondary as well. We had 132 teachers participate in implementing grading practices to support the ELA classroom. We're very proud of the fact that cross-content folks came, math people attended that training, and we were excited to have them present with that. But that encompasses almost all of our secondary teachers. So we're very proud that we had almost full participation, and that was a choice day for our teachers, and they chose to continue their learning with us. We also have monthly content countywide meetings in which teachers attend to work on focus for this year, which is data and creating formative assessments in order to help guide instruction. We have over 160 secondary teachers that are participating in that. And then we're working on our performance-based assessments and writing. That's ongoing professional learning. And then you can see just with the 2 bullet points where we're continuing to target writing with more professional learning opportunities that we have planned for the upcoming months as well. So the end. That's the rest of our presentation. So Bethany, it's back to you. I'll stop sharing my screen and then we'll be prepared to answer questions.
Thank you. We did have a couple questions in the chat, and I invite folks now to add additional ones that they have. I think that there was a question related to equity. Hang on, let me get back to it. Grading for equity, and I know that was something that we talked about broadly speaking at the September meeting. I remember Sarah and Bridget made some comments about equity-based or grading for equity sort of generally, and I don't know if you are able to comment on that more specifically related to literacy.
Sure. So there's lots of different answers related to that, just even across K-12. So very specifically, we have focus within our division. We're working with Sarah Putnam and Bridget are leading this work on grading and equitable grading practices within APS. And so that conversation is, what does that look like in an English language arts classroom? That's also K-5. And that's specific to challenging ourselves as teachers about pedagogy, belief, how we grade. But also that translates to the Bridget Law side of what does that look like in APS policy? And when you declare what you actually believe as a school system about how you grade students, how you weight, where you're using rubrics, how are you giving student feedback? And so it's an umbrella term in that way in which we talk about equity. When we're talking about culturally responsive framework, Sarah Putnam led that work with us last year. It's Goldie Mohammed's work. And that also goes into where are you explicitly framing equity within your written curriculum? Where is it that you're showing that you appreciate every student where they are, whether they need more support as a striving reader, or where do you accelerate students? I saw that question asked there too, like, what does it also mean for the students that are performing really well? And so you as a teacher, again, are looking at your belief systems, but how do we collectively build those belief systems together to put very specific things in our curriculum, like toolkits or suggestions for strategies or guidance documents for teachers that are going to say, this is how you teach a book in a culturally responsive way. This is how you choose text for students. This is about voice and choice, et cetera. So those are just in a nutshell, quickly how we're doing it across the whole division, and then pulling out our slice of ELA at the same time. Sarah, I don't know if you have more you want to contribute to that, but
No, I think you
we could
did
do all day on that.
yeah, you did a great job, but I also think it's making things accessible to all learners as well. And that's like Lori said, in our curriculum, putting in suggestions and ideas, scaffolds for teachers to use so that high quality materials and grade level materials are accessible to all learners so that it can just lift all of their skills up as well.
And we have a question. We have actually a couple questions about Lexia Power Up, the basic question of what is it, and also using it in 6 to 8, extending it to 9 to 12. What about extending it downwards into 4 or 5?
Oh, that is a great question. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I'll start with Lexia. We've been using Lexia. It is a adaptive learning program. So it's an platform on the students' iPads or laptops that they will use. And what it does is it places them, and it's based on all the 5 pillars of literacy. So we have phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary building all built in. And the student will go through and receive a series of direct instruction and practice in all of those foundational skills of reading. And what I like about it is that if a student is working in grade level material, we can see their progress. And then if we look at a detailed skill report, we can see where is a student possibly struggling with certain phonics skills or vocabulary, or maybe a phonemic awareness skill. And then that can help our teachers and interventionists really diagnose and give just-in-time instruction for the students to meet their needs. I like that they have access to it at any time. It gives them access to out of grade level material. If they have some unfinished learning in possibly the grade before, they have to work through that to get exposure and mastery of it as they're progressing through the program as well. And the middle school looks a little different, but it has some great strands of the standards and things like that the teachers can pull reports on to really get an understanding of how students are doing just on these broken out strands, these subtasks of literacy as well. Lori, anything else you want to add maybe for high school?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's a great segue. So Power Up is the secondary extension of the same program. It's built by the same company, same intentions, and it works within 3 pillars at the secondary level for word study, grammar, and comprehension, which is what you would expect from a secondary reader. It's based in that maturity zone. It's based to be high interest. It has a lot of the same aspects of Core 5 as well, but it is built more for that maturity level. And then I think there's a great question here as well for why would we not use it in elementary in terms of maybe students that would need acceleration. What Power Up does at the secondary level is different from the expectation at elementary school. And Sarah can speak back to this again. When you have a student who's really gone through all of Core 5 at an elementary level, there is a kudos. That's amazing. That student has performed really well. And at that point, we have suggested that it should be back on teachers to talk about acceleration for that student that's not necessarily on the device, not necessarily in the program. Sarah, you can speak to that really well too.
Yeah, it's funny that came up because I got a question of that today by a principal in the training. They said, what about a few of my 5th graders that have finished the program? Do they just go into Power Up? And I said, no, we don't want to fatigue them on the program, but also there are other things to solidify the skills and learning in the 5th grade material. And so Lexia is pretty robust because it has a lot of digital other skill builders and resources that students can be working on. And then we're also encouraging teachers to, give those students a some extension activities and problem-based learning to really expand and grow their skills.
I'm going to jump in because I want to move us into discussions. There were a couple of questions that maybe can get raised in the breakout rooms for discussion with the group. But I want to just quickly go to Merritt's question, and maybe this is something that Bridget wants to speak to, and it's related to sort of the implementation of the structured literacy curriculum, where maybe some schools are not fully implementing at this point, or is there sort of oversight review about the implementation? I know I saw Wendy Pilch, I think, is here from school support, but I don't know, Bridget, if you want to comment on that, sort of the consistency of the implementation.
Right, so I'll give some general overview, but then I'm going to send it right back to Sarah Cruz because she's been working closely with schools and administrators. I'm going to start with the really explicit decision to train our elementary principals over the summer so that they understand structured literacy and the pedagogy that's required to really deliver instruction that aligns with the science of reading. We absolutely buy into the philosophy that if your leader has the knowledge base and the buy-in, then they're going to be able to create structures within their building and expectations within their building that folks participate and deliver instruction as expected. That said, we're also in the process of, and as Lori and Sarah discussed, rolling out resources to our schools and have a sort of a full complement of resources for our K-12 and are working on doing the same for our 3-5. And so some of that, I wonder, in the question about fully implementing is there a question about grade level? And I'm wondering, Sarah, if you can sort of reinforce some of the challenges that we face with resources and what our expectations are moving forward.
Yeah, I think that when we think about kind of are people implementing this, we really selected a resource and have trained and given support, and also the expectation that's being used with our core phonics program because it is built in a structured literacy design. The students have practice with sounds and letters. They're having practice with decodable text, encoding with the writing directly after, and in a very sequential scope and sequence. So some of the resources installed, that's when I go on school visits, and Lori's also making school visits as well to check on, are you following the curriculum? Because our curriculum has made shifts and rolled out some resources that are aligned to structured literacy. So it's kind of like, if you're doing this, we're pretty sure that it's happening. Lexia also is another data point for that accountability. I liked how you mentioned that because that is a program that is built with structured literacy. It gives very explicit practice. It gives guidance. It gives students opportunities to review skills. It circles back if they're not getting them. And I pulled some usage reports for our elementary principals and just sent those out on Friday. I know it was mean. It was like the Halloween celebration Friday, but I sent them out anyway. And some were like, oh, cool, we're rocking and rolling with this. And others, it was kind of like a little nudge. And it was not judgmental. It was just like, here's some data for you to look at. But they noticed that maybe their percentages on certain grade levels weren't quite as high as they would have hoped. And so that really prompted a lot of conversations with their staffs on, are you implementing this resource? How's it going? Are you pulling your small groups? And that was pretty much what it meant to do. Just kind of, have the conversations with schools so that they are making, there's only so much time in the ELA block. So are they making very intentional and explicit decisions that align to what our new philosophy is and the shift that we're making in reading? And then also our resource allocation process, our request for purchase that we're putting together right now is really going to have the rubric aligned to what we're looking for so that It really gives teachers high quality resources to use with students, so that it's not really a, are you doing it? It's like our resources, if we're following the curriculum and using the resources we're given, that it will naturally just happen for them.
Thank you so much. There's still questions popping into the chat, and some of them are specific to different levels. So I think maybe what we can do is move into these breakout rooms and at least put some of those questions sort of onto the table. It's not designed to be Q&A for staff. It's really to be a discussion among the ACTL members, but it's possible that it would be, there will be ways that we can address those questions as well. So I am going to open up the breakout rooms, and this will flow very much as we did last month with conversations around math. We'll really be looking for sort of what kinds of ideas, questions, concerns do you all have? What have you been hearing in your communities, and what kinds of things are sort of key takeaways for you from this conversation, and what might we sort of explore more going forward in the school communities? So I am going to open up the rooms. I'm giving us about, I think I set it to 17 minutes. So you should now have the option to join either a elementary or a middle high discussion room. Hi, Bethany. All right, welcome back, everyone. We have just a couple of minutes, and I don't know if Jason and or Anne feel like they can do any kind of like 1 minute, 2 minute at most summary of what you all were hearing.
I can try to, and if anyone wishes to chime in and help me with this, that is totally fine. There's one concern is teachers already feeling pretty drained from everything that's been going on, and feeling a little bit like there's a new plan for teaching literacy every year. Just a little concern about burnout on the part of the teachers, or feeling like this is a big lift for them. That's one issue that came up. Also, just making sure that this is communicated to the parents in a useful way. There was a video shown at the last school board meeting that apparently was, which I haven't seen, but sounds good, that seemed to break it down in a way that would be really helpful to make sure that as many parents as possible saw. That was one possibility, but also just, we're all here talking educationese, but for the parents, how is this being, shared with them in a way that makes sense to everybody? Okay, that was really jumbled.
Thanks, Anne. Jason, anything to add there?
Yeah, I can do this real quickly in terms of just some key themes that we talked about and questions to engage around. So the topic of feedback on writing and how often that occurs and how deep it is, and then related literacy interventions that are available to secondary students. The topic of paper and pencil versus digital when it comes to writing and developing writing skills and related note-taking skills. That topic came up as well. Research papers and the skills involved in writing a research paper, or more than one before graduation, was another key topic. And then we ended on the topic of, and questions around the purpose of the separate reading class relative to English class, and what its role is and purpose, and just engaging around that topic and how parents are feeling about that particular separation.
Okay. Terrific, thank you. Before we close out, Bridget, any final comments or thoughts or anything you want to add to tonight's conversation?
Well, I'm really glad you called on me, because I was frantically looking for the video to put it in the chat, and it is not embedded in Dr. Duran's announcements that were posted to Board Doc, but we'll find that link and send it to you, Bethany, if you don't mind just sending it out to everybody. It's about 7 minutes. It's really worth a look-see, and there will be another video on secondary literacy work that will be shared at the November 16th board meeting. So I want to thank Lori and Sarah for their stalwart work in moving this forward, and appreciate the feedback. It's always helpful to get sort of a bird's eye view of how it's being consumed by kids and by parents and by teachers. So thank you for the discussion, and we'll get that link to you.
Yes, and I will say I am one step ahead of you because that link was actually in my email with the agenda for tonight's meeting. So if you all go back to whenever I sent that out last week, I believe it was in there.
Well done, Bethany. Well done. Thank you.
But we'll send it again. I won't make you go back and find an email from last week because that's hard enough to do. We are right at time. So what I will do is I will pledge to you all that within the next 5 to 7 days, I will do a follow-up that will include some key talking points, some key takeaways from tonight's conversation, and the link to the video again, and some questions that you might pose within your communities. And then we will come back together again the way we did this evening and sort of do a quick recap of that at our next meeting, which is December 8th, I want to say. Yes, December 8th. So next month it is not the first Wednesday, because that would be right after the Thanksgiving break. And we decided maybe we needed to give everybody a chance to catch their breath. So our next meeting is December 8th. I believe that the topic on the table will be social emotional learning, but I will confirm that in my next communication out to all of you. And with that, thank you for coming this evening. Thank you for engaging in these conversations with us, and do not hesitate to be in touch if you have any questions or any follow-up. And as a reminder, if you're interested in talking about the school board policy on advisory committees, shoot me an email. I will drop my email again into the chat, although you all should have it. And I'll see if I can set up a time to talk with folks. And that's it for this evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.